Hello everyone, and welcome to the second webinar of Penetration Testing, a short course presented by IT Masters on behalf of Charles Sturt University. My name is Guy Coward, and I will be your MC. Your mentor is Jeremy Koster. Should get the usual housekeeping done before I introduce a guest speaker tonight. Of course, we encourage the asking of questions and the use of chat during the webinar, and there are two ways to do so in Zoom. We ask that you direct all course content related questions to the Q&A section, and that you send all administration type questions to the support team in chat. You can chat with panelists only or to your fellow students as well, and you can make that choice by toggling through the drop-down box once you have opened the chat log. There are usually some very experienced industry-based attendees who will be most helpful with any queries you may have. Zingers are lauded, but please keep them light. We'll have Q&A sessions periodically, or if a question is particularly relevant, I'll interrupt Jeremy. Chantel and Sophie are around tonight in an administrative and technical support role for IT Masters. They're also responsible for the course page, learn.itmasters.edu.au, which is where you'll find the other materials I was talking about before, readings, discussion forums, quizzes, and of course the webinar recordings. Last week I told you about IT Masters. This week it is my great pleasure to welcome back Jason Howarth from CSU to talk about CSU broadly and opportunities to learn more about cybersecurity specifically. And you can see the slides there already. Jason is a CSU sub-dean responsible for transforming online learning and has been an important part of our short course program for a long time. He is in fact a scholar of massive open online courses, or MOOCs, and some of our long-time participants will remember actually assisting Jason with his research. Anyway, could you please welcome Jason?
Thank you, Guy. I appreciate that, that lovely introduction, and welcome everyone. As Guy mentioned, I'm associated with Charles Sturt University as the Sub-Dean of Transform Online Learning. I'm also an academic within the School of Computing and Maths at CSU and have been a long-time course director for the IT programs at Charles Sturt. So what I want to talk to you guys about tonight is our Master of Cybersecurity program, which may be of interest to some of you who are doing this short course on pen testing. In particular, what I'd like to cover is what this Master of Cybersecurity course consists of, how much it costs, what sort of time commitment would be needed to do such a postgraduate program, and what are some of the benefits that might accrue to you from gaining such a tertiary award. So we're really excited about the Master of Cybersecurity. It hasn't been offered for very long, around about 12 months. It's been very popular, and I'd like to spend the next 10 minutes just going through each of those various details. So in terms of Charles Sturt University, I'll quickly say that many of you will associate Charles Sturt as being a regional university. We certainly have a lot of regional campuses in places such as Albury, Bathurst, Port Macquarie and Wagga Wagga. But what you may not know is, in fact, we're one of the largest providers of online tertiary education in Australia, having around about 26,000 online students studying with us. So what I want to emphasize tonight is that the Master of Cybersecurity can be studied by you guys entirely online, transacted online, without ever having to set foot on a campus, and that gives you the flexibility to combine that online study with your professional and family life. So in terms of CSU and IT Masters and the programs that we offer together jointly, I've been associated with IT Masters personally for well over 15 years now. And for that time, in fact, for longer, we've been offering a great selection of industry-focused IT postgraduate programs, often highly specialised. And you can see some of the current programs there that we have on screen. These are divided into two sorts. On the left-hand side there, you can see we've got some graduate certificates, which are short postgraduate programs consisting of 4 subjects, which you can complete in less than a year studying part-time. We also have our master's programs, which are 12 subjects long and can typically be studied part-time and completed within 2 years of study while holding down a job and a busy life. So they are designed to be flexible, to be work and family friendly. And the good part about many of these programs is you can see that on the left-hand side, if we take something like the graduate certificate in cybersecurity, it has a matching master's program. So you can enroll in a short program, say the grad cert in cybersecurity. You can complete that, gain the award, and then simply move across to the corresponding master of cybersecurity, take the 4 subjects that you've done as credit, leaving only 8 subjects to complete in the masters, and you've effectively got 2 awards for doing 12 subjects. So a great way to pick up multiple awards, get great knowledge and a great certification. So they're the subjects, or the courses I should say, that we currently have on our books. But what I really want to focus tonight on is our Master of Cyber. Now, before I show you the contents of that program, for those of you who may not be that familiar with university level awards, there is a hierarchy of qualifications. And what we're talking about here in terms of a master's is pretty much right up the top of that tertiary education hierarchy. So you've got at the bottom of your hierarchy in terms of what universities offer are your undergraduate bachelor programs. Then we move up, and these levels are specified through the Australian Qualifications Framework. We move up to the graduate certificate or graduate diploma, and then we move up further to the masters. And at the top of the tree there is your doctorate, which I've got to say is typically studied by those who are pursuing a research career or an academic career. For most practical purposes in industry, a master's is about as high as you would want to go and will make you very competitive in terms of promotion, in terms of applying for jobs. So a master's program is a really great asset to help boost your career. So in terms of the Master of Cyber and what that consists of, now I'm assuming if you're coming along to a pen testing course, you certainly have some interest in cybersecurity. Our Master of Cyber consists of 12 subjects, and the way it's divided up on the left-hand side here, we have 8 subjects which are specified as core. That means every student must undertake those 8 subjects unless somehow you might get credit for those based on prior study. And on the right-hand side, you need to do an additional 4 subjects from that pool of available units, depending on your interest. So I won't go through these in detail. You can certainly Google our CSU handbook and click on the links for these various units and find out more information. But if we just go through very quickly and see some of the units here, and I might add that one of the distinguishing features of the Charles Sturt Master of Cybersecurity is that every subject in the program is a security-focused subject. And if you look at programs from other providers, you'll find a lot of filler subjects that have nothing to do with security. That's not the case with our particular program. And you can see by the names of the units there that it's highly focused on the security discipline. So looking at particular units very quickly, we've got one here, ITC 597, Digital Forensics. So that's covering topics such as forensic processes, forensic accounting, email and web forensics, network forensics and intrusion detection mechanisms. And certainly as part of the assessments for that particular unit, you'll be undertaking actual digital forensics scenarios. So very practically focused. Another unit of interest is ITC 593. You can see that over here to the right. The big focus of that unit is on cryptography. So studying that particular subject, you'll be looking at public and private key algorithms, you'll be looking at authentication systems, you'll be looking at protocols such as Kerberos. Another unit worth drawing attention to is ITE 534, Cyber Warfare and Terrorism. That particular subject, as the name suggests, you're looking at cyber warfare and terrorism activities, how to prevent them, not how to instigate them, I might add. So cyber espionage, cyber sabotage, cyber politics and vandalism. You're looking at things such as SCADA systems and examples such as Stuxnet. And that particular unit, a great example of the type of mentor that we have lecturing these programs. It's taken, or has recently been taken, by Richard Steenan, who's a worldwide expert in that area, has consulted for many governments and has written multiple best-selling books on that topic. So a lot of great units there, and you can perhaps Google and look into those more closely. In terms of the online environment that you'll encounter as a student of CSU, everything is transacted online. Here's the Learning Management System landing page for ITC 578 Dark Web. You can see there's a lecturer and his welcome video. Down the left-hand side, there are navigation options. All of the topics, all of the content that you need is contained within that site, including systems that will allow you to upload your assessments and get back your feedback electronically. There are discussion boards to interact with other students, and there are links there to connect with online weekly webinars from the academic. So it's a really intuitive, classy, and I think cutting edge online learning environment that once you get access to the course, you'll be enrolled in those environments, those learning management systems, and be able to carry out your study with your fellow students. So how do you get into these programs? Well, there's two ways. The first way, the traditional way, is to have a bachelor degree or higher in the IT area, and that will get you direct entry into our master's programs. But I think one of the unique things about CSU's offering is that we do allow a pathway for those who don't have a bachelor's degree but do have industry experience. If you have the requisite amount of experience, which is typically 3+ years, we can be flexible with that. We'd need to look at your resume and discuss that with you. But even if you don't have an undergraduate degree, that industry experience can allow you to come in through the graduate certificate pathway. And I mentioned before, from there, it's a simple transfer across into the master's, and you get to graduate with both awards. So there's absolutely no disadvantage in coming through that particular route. Are you eligible? Sometimes people like to know if they're eligible before they apply. You can go to the IT Masters website listed there on screen, itmasters.edu.au, and you can undertake an eligibility test if you want to do that before you go through the process of applying. We can feed back to you very quickly whether you're eligible and how much credit you might receive, or if you're feeling confident, you can go straight to the application page, csu.edu.au/apply, and your eligibility and any credit assessment will be done as part of that application process. In terms of the time commitment required to study a master's online part-time with CSU, you're looking at about 10 hours study per week per subject. That will obviously differ based on your experience, your recent study commitments, etc. That's an average, but there's also mechanisms for you to vary your study loads. You can study less, you can study more and try and fast track your degree completion. We also allow a significant number of leaves of absence. So if you want to take 6 months off and focus on work or family or something else, you can do that, no questions asked, and resume your study down the track. So we do allow a lot of these flexible options within our programs in terms of how you balance your study load across the year. Increasingly as well, we're offering opportunities for students to amend their submission dates for assessments. That's not wholesale yet across all of our subjects, but it is creeping into a number of our units where you're allowed a little bit of wriggle room concerning when you submit your assessments in certain subjects. Credit is a really important thing because gaining credit obviously cuts down the cost, reduces the length of your program. Credit may be available for you if you've done any previous postgraduate study in a similar area. Most importantly, if you have industry certification in areas that intersect with the types of subjects that we're offering. For example, if you have a CISSP certification, you would be entitled to credit into one of our units within the Master of Cybersecurity. We obviously need to look at the currency of those certifications. You can do a credit assessment, as I mentioned earlier, by filling out the eligibility form at itmasters.edu.au. So please do that if in doubt. In terms of the cost of the program, if you're an Australian or New Zealand student, we're looking at per 8-unit subject, which is the typical length of a subject of 3,250 per subject. For international students, 3,350 per subject. You look at the cost, but you also need to look at the cost benefit. There is a shortfall, a current shortfall of around about 2,000 cybersecurity workers in Australia. That's meant to increase by a factor of 4 over the next 5 to 6 years. And recent reports suggest that those in the cybersecurity industry are effectively earning a $12,000 premium per year over other professionals employed in more generic IT roles. So don't just look at the cost, look at the return on investment for the award that you're going to gain and the industry that you're going to move into. There are other small fees, for example, a small student services and amenities fee, around about $37 per subject to pay for things such as library services and other support services. You may also be eligible for a loan through the Commonwealth Government Fee Help Program, which will allow you to defer payment of your student fees for a designated period of time. So all of those are options. In terms of applying, we have 6 intakes per year. You can apply for any of these intakes. We have one starting on Monday, 4th of March, so you would be lucky. You'd need to be very quick to get into that one. We have other intakes starting in May, July, September, and November. I should mention it costs absolutely nothing to apply. So if you're on the fence, you can put in an application. You can even study a subject for a couple of weeks and pull out before what's called the census date, which comes around 3 to 4 weeks into a particular subject, and you won't be charged anything. So a great way to try before you buy. So if in doubt, you think you might want to do it, please apply. You can study for a few weeks, see if it suits you or not. If it doesn't, you can pull out. In terms of contacts, how to find out more about the Master of Cyber Security, or indeed any other IT Masters programs that I put on screen before. 2 great contacts, Yeslam Al-Sagaf, who's the course director, the current course director of our IT Masters programs at CSU. You can email Yeslam at the address on screen, and our IT Masters contact, Neil McCosh. Neil is available at that email address. Both of them great guys to have a chat to, not hard sell. They'll answer any of your questions and hopefully provide you with some clarity if you're in doubt about whether you want to study one of these programs or not. So look, that's all I have tonight. I want it to be fairly quick so you can get into the content of tonight's course. So thanks everyone. Enjoy the short course offered by Jeremy Koster, whom I might add is one of our IT Masters alumni, I think from one of our security courses. And there are so many of them out there that are in high positions in industry. I can say without doubt that doing a Master of Cybersecurity is one of the best things you can do for your career. But with that, no more from me. I'll pass back to Jeremy. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Jason. Jeremy, if you'd like to start sharing your screen and putting up your slides, that'd be wonderful. And thank you also to everyone who was in the chat there, answering everyone else's questions. There's a bunch of details that you can sort of discuss, and I see that there's a lot of people who have actually taken a lot of these subjects or in the process of taking these subjects. So thanks for getting involved. And yeah, thanks so much, Jason. Lovely to have you back. We'll see you next short course. Thanks a lot again.
Good on you.
Okay, Jeremy, I've unmuted you. I hope you don't mind. We'll get to any questions about, I guess, the details of Jason's presentation, either at the end of this course, or you can just contact me directly, and I'll look after you. We'll whip into the content.
Yeah, wonderful. All right, let's get going. Yeah, happy to be back into this course this week. Hope you all enjoyed it last week. We've had a great response, which is terrific, and we'll dive further into the technical this week. Last week, we really talked about being respectful and building trust. Can I also draw attention to the new line down here in the box, and please be respectful when you chat. We do expect people to be professional and respectful, even in a free course, so please remember that. I also want to talk about cybersecurity versus InfoSec, and good to see a couple of people from my previous courses in this course. So hello to you guys. I wanted to say that from my experience, cyber versus info, just pretty much information security was kind of the industry, like information assurance, kind of the audit side of it. Information security was all the pen testing, the consulting, the security architecture. Over the last 5 years, maybe over the last 10 years, government has pulled towards calling it cybersecurity. It's good for policy. I think it's a bit more good for marketing, and they like to use it. As far as I'm concerned, I see cybersecurity as equivalent to information security as a concept. I now refer to our industry as the cybersecurity industry, just because I think it's becoming more popular with governments as well. So we can talk more about that, but that's an interesting discussion to have. I grew up with, in my career with InfoSec, so it was hard to get rid of that. I had all sorts of acronyms that worked really well with InfoSec, but now it's CyberSec. I had to change some of those, which is fine. I'll answer some of the questions about live USB and things like that. I wanted to say there's a promise of providing, as I go on to the first slide, after I cut out last week, unfortunately, I had some network issues, which was very unusual, and I'm hoping not to have the same this week. Very rare that I have any issues with the system I've got. So that was sorry about that for dropping out. There was going to be a demonstration of how to set up a NAT network. I did put up some instructions and a link to a YouTube clip just in the interim. I have recorded some instructions which will be posted, but I urge you, don't wait for those things. If you the best thing you can learn as a penetration tester is really to be able to read and study and find your own resources to overcome technical hurdles. And that's really what penetration testing is. You're getting to one technical hurdle after the next, and really you're furnishing your mind with all of the knowledge you need to get over the next technical hurdle. And hopefully you're remembering those technical hurdles, so that or how to solve those technical hurdles, so when you come to it the next time, you know how to get around it. Something that helps with that is to take really good notes and to take screenshots. And I urge you all to get really familiar, and maybe there's a discussion forum. If someone could start it, that'd be great, about which pen testing note-taking application you use. There's some good, do you use Vim? Do you use are you in your Mac, or do you use the, I think it's Cherry, the hierarchical, or do you use Evernote, or what do you use? Because you really can't expect to keep everything in your brain for all these things. So keeping a list of common commands so that you can go back to it easily and understand it is really important. So last week, we covered all of the engagement stuff. We're now going to be covering some of the technical around scanning and enumeration. So when you're doing scanning, we talked about what is in scope. So you can target those that is being specified by the organization. What information is already on the internet? So what can you get just out of Google? What can you get out of DNS? How can you create an image or a picture in your mind, or even a graphical view of what the environment looks like? And that will help you place like doing a network diagram or mapping out different systems that will help you understand and visualize your next attack and your next target. Look for all hosts or network devices, so don't just obviously identify one, but you want to find all the hosts. Look for applications and login prompts. Really, what pen testing, a lot of the exploitation and gaining of access comes through two things: a misconfigured or vulnerable service that you're able to exploit, either with Metasploit or a shell script or something similar, or a weak password. These are the major ways we get into environments. And then also we want to look for all usernames and passwords. So when you get onto an environment, it's a good idea to hoover up all the passwords that you can, or all the hashes that you can, try and decrypt them, try and reverse them with John or Hashcat, and then also look for usernames, which can help. So passive reconnaissance, not so much the sloth here. My family's mad on sloths at the moment. It's really, it's an old term for scanning for information or deriving information without touching the target system directly. And it's kind of, the cool name these days is open source intelligence, or OSINT. We're looking at all the different places you can get information about your target in DNS, in WHOIS, GeoIP, reverse IP. Your Google Docs is fascinating, Bing, wireless sniffing, Shodan. You're really trying to get all of that information without interacting with the system. If you look at something like one that's not very common in people's mind is reverse IP. Reverse IP does the opposite of DNS. So if you go give me www.google.com, it'll say here's the IP address for google.com. That's DNS. Reverse IP, give me an IP address and I'll try and find, because I've kept a catalog of them, all of the websites on your on that IP address. And that is very enlightening. And also, if you're doing investigation, you can, if you've got a set of IP addresses in your scope, you can find out, not through just DNS entries, because DNS entries aren't always obvious. There might be a whole domain there that you're not aware of or hasn't been provided. You can discover those things in there. So check out reverse IP. Bing is also handy. It does a few more things than Google. Google seems to dumb down the results for hackers and those people trying to find out information. So if you put in an IP address or an email address, it won't give you too much back. But Bing will actually do a bit of that reverse IP as well, and also give you websites with IP email addresses in there as well. So it's a little bit more forthcoming with the stuff that Google otherwise say, well, this can only be for nefarious reasons. But helpful to find out what is there on your own systems. Now, this is just a sample, obviously. There are so many more resources. Some of the examples of reverse IP, I mentioned RobTex last time. I think if you do a search for reverse IP search, I'm doing it right now, you get a MX Toolbox. Hacker Target's got a good one. You get Signal's a good one. Those sorts of things. So have a look at those and come to know those sorts of tools as well. Now, active reconnaissance, like our man here running down the path, being very active, we're actually touching the target system. You actually interact with the services. And this is where really you have an opportunity to actually alter the operation of the systems. So in this can mean either by flooding the system with requests so that its resources are exhausted, or by flooding your network with requests, or by actually triggering an IPS or something similar that actually blocks your IP address or something. So you have to be aware when you're doing active reconnaissance that you're dealing with a live system and it can react to your scanning. When you're internal and you're scanning, the best idea is to actually try and scan a fair bit. Vulnerability scanning, port scanning, make it a common occurrence so that you get into daily activities so that everyone is comfortable with it. If that means just slowly broadening them out, then that's a good idea too. So starting with a small range and moving to a bigger range so that the organization gets comfortable with it. We have Nmap, which is the premium network scanning tool. I think there's Bulletproof as well. There's all sorts, like, I don't know why you go past Nmap, but there are other specific scanning tools, but for what we're going to do, Nmap will be excellent. Nmap also has vulnerability scanning capabilities with Nmap scripting engine. I advise you and encourage you to go look at Nmap scripting scripts that actually allow you to identify vulnerabilities in systems, not just open ports or versions, but will actually allow you to identify vulnerabilities. This comes in really handy, say, if you're looking for a particular vulnerability across your network. Say you have the old, we'll bring up WannaCry again, you have lots of Windows machines. If you get the vulnerability scanner out and you say, okay, now scan all these machines, unless there's a facility to bring the vulnerability scanner just down to one module, and that might be difficult to do, then you would have a very big report and a lot of traffic, all that sort of things. But what you can do with Nmap is you can pick that scripting engine, give it an IP range, and it will only check, and that's all it will do if you ask it to, for that vulnerability. So if for MS17010, then you can point it across the network and get it to pull down. Or MS0411, if you've still got that around, then that was a good one as well. OpenVAS is the free one. Obviously, there's commercial ones. Qualys, there's Rapid7's one. There's a plethora of them, varying in different quality and also in different purpose as well. Things like Acuinetics might be just a web-based scanning. I think they do a lot of network scanning as well, but it started off just web-based scanning. There's Burp Suite Professional to do web scanning as well, and injection and those sorts of things. So think about those for vulnerability scanning. Metasploit can also do some reconnaissance and vulnerability scanning as well as exploitation. So don't just write it off. It has a lot of auxiliary modules that will help you find vulnerabilities in systems. Wireless interaction, Kismet on networks is good. AirSmell, AirCrack. You can do Evil Twin. That's actually interacting and trying to bump people off their network to get them to try and authenticate with us because they can see it's the same name. A bit nasty, but very effective and really enlightening to see Evil Twin. When you realize that hashes are running around in the air and you can entice someone to pass off their password hash, then all of a sudden you can use local compute to try and decrypt it. There is a couple of rounds, so you can't just put it against a rainbow table, but it's really quite enlightening to what you can do with wireless, with enterprise authentication. All right, so network fundamentals. It's important when we're trying to penetrate a network that we understand what's happening with the network and how the network works. And if you don't have this basic knowledge of how a TCP connection will actually open, interrogate, and respond, then it's difficult to get to the next level, to understand that there's ports, there's protocols, and I encourage you, we can't cover, I mean, TCP IP is an entire subject in its own. We can't cover the whole thing in this short course, unfortunately, but understanding how networks operate is really important for moving throughout a network and understanding how computers listen on services and different ports. But what we'll kind of say now is that if you're not familiar with this, then Nmap is kind of like a probe that checks every shelf in your cupboard. And every shelf is like a port number. Shelf 1 is right at the top, and shelf going all the way down, 2, 3, 4, 5, it runs all the way down. So it's a very big cupboard, right? And it's worthwhile understanding that when Nmap probes those shelves, it's saying, is anything open here? And the shelf will go either no, go away, or it won't respond at all. So that means it's just being stealth, sometimes called, or just not responding, or it will say, yes, I'm open for business. Now, we can say that Nmap scanning port 22 gets a yes, I'm open back, we know that it's most likely an SSH server listening there. But that's only the first step. That's saying, yes, I can open up a connection, I can talk to a service on this port. Then you have to interrogate it. Then you have to send something to it to get something out of it, something meaningful. UDP is a bit like that friend you've got that doesn't like saying hello and goodbye. He just blurts out words at you and expects you to blurt words back and then just walks off. There's no graceful setup of a tunnel or a session, and there's no handshake to get that communication going. So UDP is more like it just throws out there, but don't neglect it. When you're doing pen testing, if you scan all of the TCP ports, but you forget to have even just a look at the UDP ports, you might miss out on very useful ports such as SNMP, DNS, and services that are running that may be vulnerable and forgotten about. So it's important to remember those. Now, client server, we initiate a request, the connection is acknowledged, and we have a tunnel here now. Once it's acknowledged, and then the application data goes through. I'm not actually that much of a fan of this this picture. We might try and give something better in the forum. But basically, we have a SYN-ACK situation where you get the client going, I want to synchronize, the server saying, hey, I see that synchronized, and I acknowledge, and then another ACK from the client to say, yep, we're ready to go. Here's the terms of our communication, and off we go. We start transferring data. And it all works like that in milliseconds and works very well. So when we're talking about scanning our shelves and our different ports on our network stack, there are a few ways of doing this with Nmap. A lot of books, pen testing books, talk about, Christmas tree scans and fin scans. There's a UDP scan there as well. That are helpful for poking holes in firewalls or finding out what services are hiding behind firewalls. But again, for the purposes of this short course, what you really want to do is just to get some experience in what these scans look like when you're actually scanning a legitimate server. So let's see if we can do this. I'm going to do a quick Nmap scan. I'm going to share the whole desktop.
Ooh. Okay, we can see the Kali Linux.
Yeah, okay. You can see my, okay.
Are you there, Jeremy? Perhaps there is an issue. Okay. Thanks in the chat, folks. Yeah, keep on feeding back the issues. It helps us figure out if there anything is actually wrong. Looks like Jeremy's logged out, and we'll log back in. And it looks like it is sort of an internet connection for him. All right. Well, I all hope you're enjoying the discussion so far. If anyone has any questions about Jason's presentation, if they'd like to chuck it in the Q&A section now, it would be a great time for me to answer some questions, I think. I'm someone that deals a lot with credit requests and eligibility requests, so feel free to get in touch.
I'm back.
You're back. Welcome.
Yeah, I'm back. Not sure again what happened there. This looks like it doesn't like my upload speed going nuts.
Yeah, I think that might be the case, because we've also had a few little audio issues as well today.
All right. Yeah, I'm trying to push a fair bit of data up. I'm going to try and share this again. If I have troubles, then I'll talk through it.
Yeah, no worries. Dinesh wonders whether it's the fact it's a Mac.
Oh, yeah. If seriously, no. Yeah, that's there is a bit of Mac rivalry going on in the place. Okay, so I'm going to keep an eye on this now. So let's see. So what we've got here is the do not stop VM, worthwhile getting. I've got my own Remy one here. My Kali Linux. When you've got these two machines here, you load up a VM, but you don't know the login in this screen. So you don't know the root password or anything. It's somebody else's machine, so you can't figure out the IP address. There's no real way to do it through VirtualBox either. So you can do a net discover. Whoops, in the wrong screen. Just making sure I'm still sticking around. Excuse my typos. We want a range. We know the range because we set the range when we set up the NAT network, and it's scanning that range now, and it's found these systems, right? So what you can do is look at your own network. You can see that your own network is 10.0.2.8. So this must be it here. And you can confirm that if you have a look in the device here. Settings. You can see that the NAT network has the MAC address A4C4. The do not stop network MAC address is A4C4. We have A4C4 there. So we know that's it. Okay, so that's a way to check and confirm. Sometimes when you're running a bucket load of VMs, it can be daunting to figure out which one's the one you're actually attacking. So that's a good way of doing it. Another way you might be able to do it is by running Wireshark on your host machine and watching the packets go past, or doing a TCP dump on your host machine and watching for DHCP requests. So that's a possibility as well. But this works fine. Now we'll just make sure we can ping it. Cool. And now we'll nmap it. And I'm just going to do a standard nmap here. This is as simple as it needs to be. And I'm being lazy, copying and pasting. It's important to figure out how to be lazy and to find shortcuts, because often it's just a time thing. The more ground you can cover with less time, the better. Laziness is another word for automation. All right, so we've got some interesting things here. We have SSH, we have SMTP, domain DNS, HTTP, and RCP bind, right? So we've got a few Unix services. To me, this looks like a standard Unix box. It's unusual to find something running domain just because usually DNS servers, if they're enterprise, are dedicated to being DNS servers, and you wouldn't see SSH and SMTP. This would be something that looks a little bit hobbyist. If we do an SV, then we get a little bit more information out of it. We might try and just grab some banner or do some details on the services itself. Now the trick here, and I'll be covering it in the slides, the trick here is that we are really trying to find out, is there anything here that can be utilized or exploited? Is there a problem with PowerDNS 3.4.1 or OpenSSH 6.7 P1? What about XM SMTPD? Can we get any more information about that? So this is we're starting to enumerate the services and get an idea of what can be done. Another thing we might be able to do is do a VV, so very verbose, and you can see what Nmap's doing here. Scanning the ports straight away, did an ARP scan, did DNS requests, gives you a good idea of what Nmap gets up to, then looks for the services. Something else we can do is an O. An O looks at the operating system. And tries to have a guess as to what the version of the operating system is. Not always reliable, but it will get you into the kind of in the neighborhood. We know this is Linux 3. Oh, Linux. I can't even read that up there. On the other side here, I mean. But yeah, it's giving you a bit of a Linux kernel details as well. And if you are nmapping something and you find it doesn't respond at all, just throw a P0 in there or a PN. It means don't ping it. And I'll actually skip that ping part and then go through. Because a lot of people, and it's quite controversial, will block ICMP. I don't think it's necessary to block ICMP. Most of the vulnerabilities for ICMP have gone away over the ages, but it is another service you open up that can talk to your box. So some people do like to lock everything down. Okay, so here we go. We'll jump back in. Links that, whoops. Looks like that worked okay. Wow, so I'm guessing that my loss of network connectivity there is something to do with uploading. So we'll keep going like this. I did get a text, so thanks Chantel, when that happened, because it's not really obvious to me on this side when I lose connection. So if you can let me know when that happens again, that'd be great. All right, so that's a bit of an idea of how the Nmap scanning works. You can do version detection, very helpful. You can do even more version detection. You can drag in those NSE scripts that can do more enumeration. From there, you're looking at services that you can use. Now, we had SSH, SMTP, domain, HTTP, and RPC bind. Start thinking already, if they're all patched and there's no vulnerabilities in those services, or they're just versions that don't have vulnerabilities known about them, which of those services would you be able to throw usernames at to try and break in usernames and passwords? Could you do it with HTTP? Possibly, depending on what's running on it. Domain? Probably not. It's generally a give me information sort of service, an unauthenticated service. SMTP? Some ways you can get usernames out of SMTP, possibly by brute forcing usernames, but certainly not generally. Password may not be required. It may be an authenticated SMTP server for trying to send, so you might be able to do, you know, password brute forcing on the SMTP. And then SSH, obviously that requires a username and password first up, so you can throw things at that. And you really want to work out, you know, obviously going through a service to do password brute forcing can be a slow affair, because the services generally are protected against a failed authentication attempt. So you might get 3 or 4, and then it will say disconnect, wait 20 seconds, wait a minute, wait 20 minutes, and then start up again. Some of the more advanced stuff has lockout, where you actually lock out the account for a period of time and then it unlocks again. The other bad side to that is if they lock out permanently and you get a good list of usernames, you're able to lock out the entire network of people. All right, obviously denial of service not in this, and that kind of, I have to say it, that kind of activity is not condoned or recommended. Okay, so application enumeration. Some things we can do with enterprise systems you can't do with internet systems. So enterprises are generally more squishy and soft inside. They have more services open. They may require less authentication, because the expectation is that if you're on that network, you have physical access to the enterprise's organization, or a login to the wireless, or a VPN to get in. So usually enterprise environments inside are less secure, or just more open. And you can enumerate. So SMB share and workstation enumeration, you can obviously use, there's some very good NERSoft apps. There's some good sysutils, and some of the Mark Rusanovich ones, like the Process Explorer, and things like that, that allow you to catalog all the shares if you manage to get onto the domain, or even the ones that allow you with some, you know, no authentication. Nmap scripts will also help you here to find out more about the services that are out there. Now, web page enumeration is interesting. You have a web page on our on our little network running over here. I'll try and connect to this again. I'll try and share it. Okay, we're back here. It looks happy for the moment. Now, let's now just be aware, loading up a web browser in Kali in a virtual machine can chew up some resources. Web browsers are enormous these days. So you do need to give it some, I'm finding it laggy now. I need to give it some more RAM. And what were we at? 2.5? Whoops.
Actually, there was a question, why 2.5 instead of 2.8 from John. Of course, I must let everyone know, including you, Jeremy, that this is so far above my head, I have no real idea what they're asking.
All right. I think it's because I have used that NAT network for a while, and generally when you get an IP address, either it's reserved for you for a period of time and it degrades and drops off the radar and then it's up for release again. But then also DHCP clients will often ask for the same IP address when they come up again. So I must have had some other services on this this network.
Thanks.
Yeah, hope that answers it. So this is the web page that we've been looking at. So we see it here, the HTTP Apache HTTP D, and when we browse to it, we get this. All right, so just to explain this, the VulnHub website is a terrific resource, but you do need to utilize it well, in that it does take some time and effort to get these vulnerable machines running and to go through the walkthroughs. But this is by far and away the best way to learn this stuff. So creating this stuff your own, or trying to do this in a controlled environment, or setting up a lab yourself and installing services and whatever, just takes far too much time. This is the fastest way to get to know vulnerable systems. Obviously, there's other CTFs you can go to, groups you should be in, mailing lists, all that sort of stuff that you should be in. But if you're doing your own self-study, I guarantee that this stuff will be the most beneficial. So we come here, we have this website. It's obviously a CTF. A lot of the VulnHub images are capture the flag, CTF, capture the flag, competitions that they've wrapped up and uploaded to VulnHub so that other people can try them out. That's good. So it's very nice of them. There's a bit of a competition about the best ones. What you need to do when you are starting is to find the VulnHub, then do a Google search for that VulnHub image name and walk through. And you'll come up with either YouTube clips or technical walkthroughs about how people broke into them. And it's fantastic. It's like training material that steps you through each step. And don't just read it. And this is the whole point of this hands-on course, is not to just to read the walkthrough or watch the video, but to step through it yourself, get the tools working yourself and run through them. And this is what's going to be needed for the lab in this course, is to be able to walk through the vulnerable image that you'll be provided a week before the actual exam. So you have a week to try and break into it and go through walkthroughs, but it's modified, so you need to find the unique flags in the vulnerable image. So that's the idea. So doing this stuff is very good. That VulnHub is a great resource. I was a bit skeptical at first. I went, oh, what's this? This is all a bit too hard. But once you get the hang of getting these images working, then you're off and running, and you can, the world is your oyster. All right, so we have a website. It's not very impressive. Where do we go from here? I'm going to close this because it's chewing up my VM resources. What we can do is maybe we'll do a Nikto. Nikto is a great tool. I think it's host. One of the issues with these tools are they have not very much standard switches or command nomenclature or order to them. So they also use different conventions. That's what I'm trying to say. All right. So what have we found here? We found it's Apache, server links inodes. You might want to look that up. I'm not sure it's that interesting. CGI directories found, if you want to, we haven't found any CGI directories. We found games, Dropbox, contact search, WP contents. This is interesting. The WP admin, WP contents, WP includes are all WordPress items. And WordPress, I don't know if everyone's aware, but it's one of the most, I guess, vulnerability ridden website packages out there, but it also runs about 80% of websites on the internet. It's incredible, all the way from multinationals down to mum and dad's.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Why is that the case? Why can't they fix it?
Oh, so it's not just a matter of it's broken and they've never fixed it. There are so many versions to it, and it's constantly being patched. And you can now actually get WordPress that will patch itself and update itself because that's what was needed. It's just that it's a community-driven package in the first instance, and it was very easy to set up. So lots of people took it up, but they took it up from version 2 and never updated to version 3 or never updated to version 4. So people are stuck in their versions that are very vulnerable. So half the phishing websites you have on the internet are driven by vulnerable WordPress sites, which is not great. But this is all very interesting. So that's what we do. We take these tools and we get these interesting facts back. Robots text is that text file that tells search engines where to and not to go, and they may or may not respect that, but it's certainly something we can have a look at. We have, some other stuff that might be interesting. So we might search on this. And the idea is that you plug some of this stuff into Google and then it comes up with what might be good or not so good. And we have this is really interesting here, the PHP My Admin. This is a way to do MySQL admin through a PHP website, which is really something you want to break into. I understand we're running out of time, but this is, I think this sort of stuff is a good way to show what the next steps are. The next thing you might do, and this might slow things down a little bit for my system, is Directory Buster. So we got I think it's 5. And Directory Buster or DIRB comes with its own word list, and it will try and find standard paths in a website that might be interesting. Now there's one that's interesting, entering directly control. It's got contact. There's all sorts of things on this website that we can look into. And what I think I mentioned it last week, there's times when you have so much information coming at you, you really have to build up a sense of what is important and what's not important, and what you've broken into before, and what you know to be quite vulnerable. There we see the WP admin going there, and literally we're brute forcing the directories in this website. And why do we need to do that? Because the website doesn't just hand over its entire directory. You have to ask for it, and it'll say if it's there or not. And that's what this is happening. This is what's happening. It's doing it en masse, and it goes on for a bit. So we'll just let that go in the background. Oh, I've lost my cursor. There we go. Okay. All right. So there's DIRB, there's Nikto. We've got Nmap scripts, which are kind of cool. We have a way to interrogate a website. This is making my machine work. The fan just came on. Be aware of that. This is why we shouldn't do these things with production systems just straight off the bat. We need to understand what is going to cause a load to a website. All right, let's go on. Sniffing. I love this picture of an elephant's trunk. I think it kind of, this is what I think wireless sniffing should look like. You should walk around with an elephant kind of head mask on and a trunk coming out, and actually do wireless sniffing like that. So
I've liked all the pictures tonight. It's been good.
Oh, good. So really sniffing, can't be done from your attack machine because you'll just see your own traffic. And you've got access to your own traffic. I'm going to stop this derb in the background. As you can see, it goes hell for leather. It's heating up my room, actually. It really starts to... There we go. Okay, all right. Okay, all right. So, so sniffing is best done on a target machine. So if you actually get a shell, and you can actually do TCP dumps, or you can do a T-Shark or a Wireshark if you get you know, maybe you get a VNC, the desktop image through your Metasploit exploit or something like that. Then sniffing gives you a way to look at traffic coming in and out of the system. Now, this is really great if you have something like FTP or SNMP or Telnet. You can just sniff the passwords right off the network and use those maybe on the machine itself. You may have it exploited already, so you might be able to use it to pivot. But the sniffing is really important. So remember that. Obviously, for wireless sniffing, that's really important because that's the only way you can get the information out of the air. You're really just hoovering up all the bits and bytes that they're flying around on the radio waves and trying to reassemble them or figure out something about it so that you can actually break into. And goodness knows it's possible that while you're sniffing, you might actually come across some serious data that's unencrypted and then use that onwards, but also to be able to say, hey, look, if we were able to compromise this machine, it may not be very juicy, but it had access to network traffic that had this sort of data in it. And that's pretty concerning. And that's kind of the sort of thing that people need to know can happen on their machines. So vulnerability scanning, a little bit controversial. That you won't do too much vulnerability scanning with the Vuln Hub, but I encourage you to get OpenVAS working. It is resource heavy and resource hungry, and kind of a little bit lazy if you're targeting one machine. If you're targeting one machine, I'd expect that you should be able to nmap it, get to know the services well enough to handpick what you're going to try and target. And that's really what we're looking for here. We're looking for the next target to go after, the next candidate for exploitation. So the vulnerability scanners keep a database of operating systems and application vulnerabilities that have been identified over time, and they'll try all of them. You can obviously filter them or you know, try it on less, but it can take a long time. It's good to get to know how long your vulnerability scanning takes. I know on some networks, even an Nmap scan of a range, maybe a /16 range, can take a good 11 hours, even if it's got reduced ports that it's looking at. So it is important to, you don't just vulnerability scan an entire corporate network and expect a response in an hour. You might need to chunk it up. It's just, yeah, it's important to get a good sense of how long it takes on your network. They're not perfect. I've seen far too many security teams do a vulnerability scan, get a report out of it, and then throw that at the sysadmins and say, hey, why don't you go fix up all these problems? The issue with that is that they lose interest very quickly. The real service that cybersecurity professionals can provide, or pen testers can provide, is to say, look, we've got 60 odd vulnerabilities here. These 3 at the top will lead to host intrusion, and we can demonstrate that. And that actually brings the risk to a reality and will get things moving in the organization. And that's really important to remember. The actual demonstration and capturing of evidence of a vulnerability being exploited will get people moving because they know it's real and they know it can happen. And then they go and fix them. So it's important to take the report and decipher it for the business and for the technical staff, and then provide means to fix it. Say, this is how we think you should fix it. And sometimes that feels like putting your neck out there and you say, well, it's a vulnerability. You guys are the sysadmins. Why don't you go fix it? But that's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to be collaborative. We're trying to help people fix it. You say, we think you should patch it with this patch. That's the suggestion. If it goes all horribly wrong, we're sorry, but that's kind of what the documentation says. And we kind of, security guys should not just know how to break into things, but they should also know how to fix things. So it's a skill to learn that as well. And then they might say, no, 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 we don't want to do that. We want to fix it this way. And that's cool too. If they want to fix it a different way, that's fine. But you've got to make sure you have a way to retest that vulnerability to make sure it's not still resident in that system. So that you can say, well, that way you tried to do it, all good and well, but it didn't fix it in this way and we can still get in. So it's important to remember that the reports aren't perfect and it needs that technical expertise to decipher it. Often used to save time. Sometimes it doesn't save any time. It just takes you longer time as you wait for all the processes to finish and all the scanning, all the threading to finish. Still requires that analysis and validation I was just talking about. There are also some authenticated scans. I don't really like authenticated scans. That's a bit controversial, I know, but this is where a vulnerability scanner actually logs into the box and interrogates the box from inside and says, oh, you've got all these libraries that are vulnerable. In a lot of environments I've been in, we are looking for the network accessible vulnerabilities, not so much what can be exploited from inside. Often, if you're talking about workstations, you want to know what web browser they're running and you want to patch the client software because that's the target of the phishing crews and all the viruses. They make use of the client software because the user interacts with the website, pulls down something and gets their machine compromised. Often that's not the case with servers. So it's a matter of understanding the context in what you're scanning. Is it going to be helpful to scan 100 servers and come out with 30,000 critical vulnerabilities, all of which are on the client side, and none of these servers are used for browsing or can't even access the internet? So you've got to understand the different risks. Obviously, there's still a risk having vulnerable software, and we prefer not to have vulnerable software anywhere. But we also don't have unlimited time, so we need to pick our priorities and make sure we go after the risky items. And that's about business context as well. And then discovery scans. Security organizations will offer to come in and do a discovery scan and tell you all your woes. I don't generally go for those from a penetration testing exercise because I pretty much know where a lot of my problems reside in the environment that I generally am in the organizations I've worked for. I still have a lot of priorities. I'm constantly scanning inside. So the expectation is that discovery scans shouldn't tell me too much I don't know. Certainly not on the perimeter. I should know my perimeter pretty well if I'm an internal pen tester. What's on there, is it vulnerable? Challenges, vulnerability scanning. We've talked about this a bit, but it can cause outages. Give it a bad name. Go lightly with the vulnerability scanners. I've seen Nessus take down networks, systems at least. Run it out of hours at the start and say, hey, look, we've been running this out of hours for 6 months. It caused no problems. You can see it on your system monitors. Can we start doing this during hours so that, my guys can get sleep during normal work? Think about network segmentation. Vulnerability scanners are interesting because they often have access to all the networks on your enterprise environment, which makes them a great target for hackers to get into because then they have all this access that they don't usually have. I don't know if that's always a good idea to punch into every environment. Maybe something a little bit more segmented or having an extra control mechanism there is a good idea as well. Bandwidth and resource considerations, we talked about that. Change windows and notifications. You always got to let people know these things are happening. Nothing worse than someone walking up to your desk saying, we've seen a whole lot of traffic coming from your system. Our entire CRM application is down. Would you know anything about that? And that's a sinking feeling you don't want to have. So we want to make sure everyone knows what's going on. You have the proper authorization. And that's what happens if an outage occurs when you're scanning. And then when an outage occurs when you're scanning, there is a negative feeling about scanning from then on. So tread lightly. Now, social engineering. This is really about deception, trying to get someone to do something or share something they wouldn't normally do. And the most obvious one is phishing, where we have people saying your account's about to be suspended. Give me your credentials. And sometimes the target will respond. False invoice. You have an invoice. So respond. Please pay. People wouldn't typically send money to someone they don't know, but if it's well constructed and provides enough pressure, then they might do it. The ransomware one, an AGL bill or a some sort of payment notification to get someone to open it, and then it runs and encrypts. That's also social engineering, because you're tricking someone into and deceiving someone to get them to do something they wouldn't normally. And gift card scam. I don't know if anyone's seen these, but these are very lazy attempts of criminals to get people to buy iTunes gift vouchers, or even Steam gift vouchers we've seen recently. Or even just shopping center gift vouchers, and send the barcode via text message or via an image, via photo from your smartphone. And basically they impersonate a head of an organization or a senior member or an executive, and they try and get the individual to provide this detail. It's amazing, but it actually does work, because there is a culture in some organizations of trying to please those in upper management. Well, in a lot of organizations, that's the case. So in social engineering, we have phishing email that looks usually dodgy, and then a website that is varying quality. Some of them are very good, some are very poor, usually hosted on a broken WordPress site. We have whaling, which is that the idea of going after someone who is high up in the organization. Spear phishing, which is targeted, a bit more tailored for the target. Shoulder surfing, which is looking for, I don't know if I've ever seen this happen. I've never had a hacker kind of suddenly appear behind me and see my password and whatever, but I have seen a worker try and watch someone's password go in to figure it out, or PIN to go in. And that's what shoulder surfing is all about. When you're in a corporate organization, you have long enough passwords, not really an issue, but still worthwhile figuring out, what's on your screen, being aware of leaving your screen unlocked and things like that. If you're a pen tester and you're coming into an organization, you're breaking in, or socially engineering your way into an office floor, then you'll be looking at all the screens for information, maybe even taking photos. So that sort of shoulder surfing you should be aware of. If you see people in the organization or in the office floor that you think shouldn't be there, then yeah, certainly have a look. USB drops, people are intensely curious about what's on a USB drive. I'm not sure what they're planning on finding. I have actually found a USB drive before and used a totally offline live system to have a look at it. It took all the precautions necessary, but just plugging it into your system that is connected to your network. I've been in an organization where they set up a great sting on this sort of thing, not a sting, but an exercise on this, and they dropped a whole lot in the car park, and it actually caused mayhem on the office floor, because it played a WAV file through the computer's speakers at absolute volume, at the absolute highest
so
volume.
good.
Yeah, and so you knew who'd been viewed by it, because you could hear it, and the WAV was a turkey gobbling, so it was across the floor. So, a really good way to get people to thinking about that sort of deception and social engineering that can happen. All right, tactics are impersonation, urgency, and fear. If you can get someone to believe that you are someone you're not, and you put enough urgency on it, you can actually engender some fear, and they actually do what you're expecting. I don't know if anyone's had that phone call that you are going to be litigated, or you're going to be arrested if you don't respond to this phone call, and it's absolute bupkis. But it actually, for people who don't know, it can actually make them quite fearful and do things they wouldn't normally do. So all these tactics are worthwhile thinking about when you're pen testing. Often it's friendly phishing, or doing social engineering over the phone with a service desk or something like that. Whew, okay, so that's it for this live session. We still managed to get in a good hour, I think, or almost. I hope that was good. We have obviously dived deeper into Nmap, try a few NSE scripts for next week. Try doing the walkthrough for Do Not Stop. It's really interesting. It's a good CTF style Vuln Hub image, and it will walk you through getting flags and getting that understanding of CTF and being able to understand the stages of breaking into a system. So that experience is invaluable. Watch a few YouTube videos. Find a good Vuln Hub image of your own and share your experiences in the discussion forums. If you find a good one that you're finding particularly helpful on a particular vulnerability in an exploit, throw it into the discussion forum and try and work off each other's experiences. And that's the way to do it. And don't forget to do the little quiz we have as well. Okay, Guy, I think that's it. Do we want some Q&A?
Yeah, let's do a few of them. As I said, some of these questions, I honestly don't know what they're asking. So I reckon maybe it's a good idea if you could actually open the Q&A and have a look. Thanks so much. That was really cool. I love the looking at you doing things thing, even if I don't understand really what you're doing.
Demo. We'll try and do a bit more exciting things in the exploitation week.
Cool. Excellent chat, by the way, this week. Well done, everyone. Super interesting.
Linux Docker image, yeah, sure. If you can get it working with the Vuln Hub images, then feel free to use any software that you want to use. Yeah, that's not a problem at all. Live USB of Kali. Just be careful with the live USB or the live image. If you don't get the persistence right, sometimes you can set persistence, but it doesn't stay. And that's very frustrating, especially if you're taking notes. So not great. I can answer some of these, but they're not pen tests. I might stick to the pen test specific one. Yeah,
go for it.
Ooh, the evil twin tool, cool. Oh wow, yeah. I'd suggest throwing that one into the discussion forum. That's about the Wi-Fi adapters. That's a little bit in depth and technical. To need to have a look.
Okay, just for context, that's Omar's question. I'll just dismiss that one now. But yeah, Omar, chuck it in the forums.
Oh, so John, I was able to look into the VirtualBox settings of the Vuln Hub target and confirm that hardware address, that MAC address for that network adapter was mine. So John, that's how I knew that 10.0.2.5 was that one. So that's the way to confirm. Oh, cool. I just clicked on Answer Live. Sorry if you're doing that, Guy.
No worries.
The dir list to a text file. The results, yeah. So just pipe it out to a text file. That's the greater than key or less than. But basically, you want to point it to the file, so you pipe it out. So you do standard out for that.
I think you might have actually been asking if you could if we could get a copy of that one that you were doing.
Oh right, I see.
Would we be able to put that on the Moodle page? Would that be something
that's not a problem?
Cool.
But I would encourage you to try and run Derb against that Vuln Hub image yourself, and see what happens. You should get exactly the same result. I just use standard Kali for that, but we can certainly put that up so you can check it against the other one.
Thanks.
I'll put it in the discussion forum. Is that right, Guy? Best
yeah, sure. Yeah, that's perfect spot.
I'm reading Andrews with the list of vulnerabilities in the hierarchy. Shouldn't we be taking into consideration that there are other layers of security that the scan result may not be taking into consideration? I guess you're talking about IPS or some sort of rate limiting. Some systems have, or some tools have some sort of IPS detection I think you can't do too much about it. You kind of have to choose your windows. If you're finding you're scanning a system and it is changing the results rapidly, you might have to try, doing a different system, or you getting cut off with your shells or something like that, and then you might have to move on to something else. But yeah, it's possible. Less likely for these Von hubs and CTFs. They're usually not that tricky. Some of the advanced ones are. They make you duck and weave a bit. But yeah, that really is getting into the advanced. Good question though, Andrew. Airlock. Abdul, I'm not really sure on this particular product. Yeah, I'll have to pass on that one. Oh, you can get Do Not Stop straight off the Von Hub, Daniel. So please download it. You should be able to install it directly. What I will say is make sure you get the networking right, as in make sure you assign the network interface and only one network interface to the NAT network. Don't try to create multiple, don't mess around too much with the networking. If you manage to change the interface too much, then you can lose the network interface, then you have to break into the box to fix it. So yeah, just be aware of that. Or we can put the link for Do Not Stop in there. I think it's in there, the link for it in the discussion forum. Choice of protocol preference to try first. Well, Wasim, my choice of protocol would probably be HTTP or HTTPS, just because it's so rich. But if you see something like FTP and Telnet, then why wouldn't you throw usernames and passwords at it? But HTTP and HTTPS are by far and away the most likely points of exploitation. Malik, what's the best way if I want to scan, not scam, home internet IP to test firewall? There are a few things on the internet. To be honest, what I have is a couple of virtual machines. There's very cheap virtual machines out there that you can rent, even for $5 a month, less even these days, that allow you to scan your own system, and that's really a good measure of how your system is positioned. If you scan your external IP address from inside, you may not get a real result because there may be an ACL that says allow certain services from inside on that external. Maybe it will give you a good, but to be certain, you need to really scan it from outside. Yeah, that's the whole trick, Leroy. So is there any order of priority with vulnerabilities that will be suggested or recommended? We go through a little bit of this. We can't cover it too much, but a lot of the skill is working out which vulnerabilities are interesting and which services are interesting for that matter. So which service, which versions, have a look at search exploit. So install, if it's not installed in Kali already, and do search exploit, and have a look at, throw a few service names into search exploit. So do search exploit Apache, maybe put more at the end so you don't get a whole, screaming pages going past of Apache vulnerabilities. But yeah, it's the skill is to work out what is interesting and what is not. User awareness is really important. I like to exhaust technical capabilities, not exhaust to the point of we've used up all the organization's money, but within reason, exhaust the technical capabilities and the technical controls before I press user awareness. I don't like to say we won't fix a technical vulnerability because we need, so we won't fix technical vulnerability. Instead, we'll rely on our people to not to not act insecurely, because I don't expect everyone to know all the time how they should behave with certain vulnerabilities, but I do expect people to do the basics. So, the things like be cautious of clicking, check the domains of websites you go to that you think might be impersonating, report phishing emails. use strong passwords. Don't use the same passwords everywhere for personal, those sort of standard things you do need awareness about. But I don't believe in supplementing user awareness for technical capability. I lean on technical capability to protect the individuals. And ideally, it's a bit lofty, and I'm being a little bit kind of pie in the sky here, but I would like technology to work as such that people have the confidence to use it without having to worry too much about security. And I don't think we're at that place in the industry at the moment. We have some gaping problems in trust and identity that we have to second guess ourselves. I don't like that being the way. I'd like to think that we have a future where we can actually use systems without having to know the in-depth technical knowledge of how they work underneath. Could be a long way from that.
Maybe just one or two more, Jeremy, and
sure.
We'll call it on the top of the hour.
Yeah, this is great. I'll keep going.
We could keep going all night. We got to let people go.
Do you think it's important to know how to craft your own payload, or is it good enough to already use made ones? For this and most pen testing, it's okay to use already made ones. When you're getting into research and you're crafting your own ones, then that's the next level. And I encourage you to head for that. And doing your own shell scripts and vuln testing, terrific stuff. But yeah, right now, just focus on using others and being, for want of a better word, a bit of a script kiddie, and working out what's useful and what's not. How to sort snort bro test for Nmap. How to. Oh right. So how do you detect snort or bro? IDSs in Nmap. Well, sometimes you can't if it's just in scan mode. I mean, they'll pick you up and maybe block you, so it's a bit difficult.
I have one question from Facebook. I'm always very excited to say that. How to differentiate between clickjacking and CSRF by clear example? That's a question from Ramez, listening online on the Facebooks.
Clickjacking and CSRF, like cross-site request forgery, to differentiate between the two. Well, I think they're fundamentally different in the way they work. So cross-site request forgery is actually using kind of the tab browser to make a call from a malicious tab into a kind of a reputable tab. So from a dodgy WordPress site, WordPress is getting a bad rap tonight. Dodgy WordPress site into maybe your banking site and try and getting some sort of transfer going. That's how clickjacking, I think, is more to do with hijacking what your browser is doing to click on things that you didn't think you were clicking on, and getting advertising and things, revenue out of that in a different way. So technically, they just look different and have different purposes. Hope that helps.
Me too. Thank you very much for your generosity with your time, Jeremy.
Yeah, no problem. It's been a good session.
Yeah. What are we looking at next week in terms of content?
Oh, so next week is going to be more of exploitation and password guessing. So we will actually exploit some systems, and I'll try and get some good demonstrations. This is where the demo gods don't like people treading, but we'll try and make it work. And then also we'll look at how we might be able to guess passwords in a service and how that works, and also crack a password with a hash. So that's
cool.
Good fun as well.
Awesome. All right, we'll look forward to that one. Thank you very much again for your content tonight. Thank you, Jason, for your guest spot. I know you've already gone home, but that's okay. And thank you, Sophie and Chantel, for your assistance with the chat and the admin. And of course, thank you everyone who attended tonight. Great session. We had something like 800 people at the start of the night. We're down to 600 now, but it is 10 o'clock, so Melbourne time. So yeah, thanks very much. Have a good week.
Good. Yep.
I'll let you sign off, Jeremy.
Thanks, Guy. Thanks, everyone. See you next time.